Okay, well, welcome to the ISU Beef Teaching Farm. Today we're going to take a little bit of time and talk about some of the different fencing materials and different types of fences that we use here for different situations. Where we're standing right here is actually on a farm where we're doing a complete re-fence on all of our perimeter and interior fences. This is probably some of the oldest fence on our farm that's still in heavy use. What we're standing next to right here is actually some of our newer style of perimeter fence that we're installing here. This is actually a 6-strand high tensile barb fence. I chose this material, the high tensile material, especially high tensile barb, because of the convenience of putting it up. When we put this product up, we can just pull our wire taut and then we can use an inline tightener. We don't have to worry about the stretch for the wire for the different times of the year, and this fence is going to maintain that tension. This is about where I want those at. We'll come back through and also run an electric offset off all of our fences just to keep the pressure off of them. All of our perimeter fences here are going to be either a woven wire with barb or a minimum of 5 strands of barbed wire to keep us a legal fence for the state of Iowa where we're at. Your legal fence definition is going to change for every state. So we try and make sure that we're always legal when we're fencing next to a road. We use a lot different style of fencing for interior fences versus our lot fences, which we'll talk about those in this video as well as touch on how we use electric fencing as a tool here, as well as how we incorporate that into our permanent infrastructure on the farm. So one of our quickest, most convenient fences that we'll put up are these continuous panels that a lot of people are starting to use. They're pretty quick fence that we can throw up somewhere because they're lagged on with clips just onto posts. We can take it down, whether you're building a portable corral in a pasture that you might have rented, or we actually use this as a photo pen when we're photoing cattle for sales. Makes a very attractive backdrop, low maintenance. It is one of our most expensive fence options. Actually, this is our most expensive fence option that we install here. But it's really nice, the ease of it going up. We can put it up 20 foot at a time, and it's pretty quick to install for us here at the farm. So when we install this, if we're going into a more permanent situation, instead of putting in wood posts, just due to a cost factor, we'll actually elect to put this on oil field pipe. We actually just weld all of our clips on. It still allows this panel to expand and contract. When I'm ordering this, I usually order a little bit heavier gauge material. There's a lot of different types of this, so do your homework on which one you want to put your money into installing, but definitely a great fencing option. Can take a lot of high pressure, can use it in a corral or a lot setting, and it's a pretty flexible option that you have as opposed to fully welded. You don't have to own a welder to install this. You can use just good creosoted posts and probably the impact that everybody has rolling around in their pickup, and you can have a really nice attractive fence. So one of the other types of fences that we use quite a bit is actually just a smooth high tensile fence. When we started putting these in, we started putting them in either all on wood posts or all on T-posts. Then we moved to a fiberglass sucker rod, which I still like. One of the other products that we've started to use is actually a commercial post. And these posts are kind of neat in the fact of we can put a lot of pressure on this fence. So if we have a round bale roll out of a baler and roll over the fence, this fence will actually flex and the bale can actually go over it. I've seen a pickup pretty much drive completely over one of these and they spring back up. So that's kind of nice. Obviously there's a cost trade-off. These are a pretty expensive post. They should be a one-time purchase. I've never had any of these plastic clips pop off yet. With all of our high tensile fences, there's a couple of things that are important. There's a little bit more maintenance that goes into these smooth wire fences. One is to make sure that you've got enough tension in it. This fence actually is a little bit loose here today. I want a little bit more tension in that, but it's really simple. We go to our ratchet or our tightening device further on down the fence and we just put a couple of clicks in it. The one thing that we've done here is we've made this farm all powered off one fencer. So we've got almost about 200 linear miles of electric fence wire running off one centrally located fencer. It's a pretty big fencer, but it's a quality fencer, lots of lightning protection, great grounding system on it. But with running a good high quality fencer it gives us a lot of flexibility. One of the things that we use a lot here are fence testers. So every day we can measure what our fence is. We're at 3.5 kilovolts today, which is actually pretty low. We're about 1/8 of a mile away from the fencer. Actually, as the power comes to this, we're over a mile away. We're at 0.1 amps, which is pretty low for resistance on this. But this gives us a really good way to check our fence. We started using these a long time ago. I prefer to use the Gallagher brand. There's a lot of companies that make them. I prefer to use Gallagher. The other thing that we did is now we have a smart fencer. What that allows us to do is, this is a different style of fence tester. And if I wanted to actually tighten those up over there, I can shut my fence off with this remote. You see it's off. Now we can grab this fence and it's completely dead. So we can work on it. When we're done, we put the remote back on it, wait a second, and it'll turn our fence right back on for us. So that's one thing that makes fixing and maintaining a fence really nice. Yes, these fencers cost quite a bit more. Our fencer, I think, is somewhere getting up close to about $2,000. But when you really look at the risk and reward benefits from it, it doesn't take very long, very many hours of driving all the way back to the fencer to shut it off, to work on something, or driving to a cutout switch to start seeing a reward from that. Now, the fencer that I run is a 58 joule fencer, so that's a pretty big fencer. Most of them, I think the biggest one that you can go into Tyson's and Ames today and buy is a 10 joule fencer. We use a really big fencer with a lot of joules because we get quite a bit of weed load on this fence in areas. We will shut certain sectors of the farm off during the year that we don't need, but it's not uncommon during the winter when we don't have a weed load on this fence. We'll get it up to 10 kilovolts, which is a pretty hot fence. That's 10,000. That's a really hot fence. So we'll actually turn our fencer down in the winter because that's getting to the point where if something got tangled up in it, it could be dangerous. But it's great. On our heavy weed load, 3.5 today, all of our fences are always at a minimum of 2 kilovolts for cows. Anywhere that's housing bulls, a minimum of 5 kilovolts. 5.0 kilovolts on our fence testers is where we want all of our fences at. Okay, so what we're going to talk about here is how we use our electric fence really to turn these cattle into a land management tool. Through the years, and we've been using portable electric fence for a long time here, we've really learned and grown and changed how we fence. When we first started doing this, we used some of the polywire products that were out on the market. This is actually a reel still loaded with the old turbo wire product. That's a brand name. There's lots of different companies that make a good polywire. I prefer to use one company. That's my decision. We started out with fiber rod posts with these little metal clips. Great option, very cheap, low cost. Don't have to worry about shorts in your fence. That's the biggest reason why I avoid putting T-posts in any fence if I can help it. Because essentially when we put a T-post in a fence, all we've done if we're running an electric fence is created a perfect ground rod for that fence. If we can keep it all on fiberglass is the best. We've used these, we've gone away from them for the most part. I still like having some around. If we get into the winter, especially with some of our alternative winter cow feeding strategies, we can still get these in the ground in the winter. What we can do is we'll actually take a drill with a spade bit, we'll pilot a hole, and then we can stick this down in the ground, get past the frost. And it's actually a pretty cheap, effective way that we can swath graze or winter stockpile graze or graze some crop residues when the ground's froze. As you can see, we're pretty dry here in Story County right now. These can be kind of a booger to get in the ground. When it's dry, you need to have, we actually have a small driver that goes over them to drive them in the ground. So the next thing that we went to after that was actually a plastic step-in post. I don't even have any more of them because they all got destroyed. They worked. The UV light really breaks that plastic down, and that's our biggest thing that we fight on our fencing system components is UV breakdown over time. So for really quick portable fence posts, this is actually just an add-on insulator. We've moved to step-in posts because we can put them in the ground really fast. We have a ton of these things. If the ground's soft, we'll actually drive in a utility vehicle and just kind of lawn dart them out the side, and then we go back and put the wire in. We can just flip it in and then just step it in the ground. I use the heavier duty ones, so if we get into a spot where the ground's froze, we can get that post back out without destroying it. I love these. We added these little insulators on some of them so that we can also fence and control calves. In the spring, we'll move our sacrifice paddocks where we kick pairs out into, and we'll hold them with just one hot wire on top and then a calf wire on the bottom. And we don't have a whole lot of issues with calves jumping through that if we place the wire correctly. We've had lots of different reel configurations over the years. We've used everything from extension cord reels. We still house some wire on that. I like a geared reel. We've got quite a few of these for just, if we're gonna move a fence somewhere really quick, these 3-to-1 gear ratio reels are pretty nice. You can put out a lot of wire in a hurry. We can just hook it onto the fence and we can walk backwards, and it's pretty easy to go over to a post and we can just flip that right in there. When we get to the end, flip the stop down, put the tension that we want on the fence. It has a nice hook that we can hang it onto our other fence, and we can power it from either this side or that side depending on how I configure the conductors on either the handle or the reel. This is kind of a unique handle. Don't mind the color. There's lots of companies that make them. I can hook it up so it's insulated from this end and being fed power from the other side, or I can flip it over and I can hook it this way and I can feed power from this direction and insulate it on that end. So it gives you a lot of flexibility. We can wind this up really quick, which when we're temporary fencing, whether it be rotational grazing or swath grazing, the speed at which we can put fence out starts to become really important, because if it's not easy, you're probably not going to do it as often. So we try and make it so one person can move about 600 foot of fence here. If we're using step-in posts, it's going to take us probably about 10, maybe 15 minutes, depending on the terrain that we're crossing and how many posts need to go in. If we're using our tumble wheels, we can do that in about 8 minutes. So depending on how bad the wind is, our tumble wheels will just roll that whole fence forward. We use it mostly in swath grazing. We just roll our entire fence forward, go to one side, move it down, and the other side, the rest of the fence will move forward for us, so we don't have to put posts in the middle. So we try and keep our temporary fencing pretty flexible so that we can use it as an effective management tool to focus cattle pressure in one area, or kind of change how we're using those cattle to utilize the feedstuffs that we have available.